Hello, and welcome to Studio 770. I am so happy that you are with us. This is an amazing talk. It's how to overcome anger, be happy, and live in the moment. Anger keeps so many of us trapped. And we're going to discuss if anger was a problem in the past or it was a problem in the present. I'm your host, Rabbi Weinberg. I am the author of about 20 books on Jewish mysticism and the wisdom, how it applies to our lives. You can check me out on my website, KabbalahWisdom.org, and I'm joined with celebrity trainer Steve Roth. Steve, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Steve Roth, and I'm a man that lives in a room in Nicaragua.
He's a humble man. He's trained Madonna, Chuck Norris, amongst many celebrities, but he is, thank God, learned how money is not the be-all and end-all. He's living happily. Now, Steve, you've been divorced. I've been divorced. We've been through life. We've been through tough stuff. And yet, I got to say, I'm pretty happy. And I know you're very happy. So the question is, what's the secret? So many people carry pain. This guy said this. I was a rabbi in a country, I don't want to say where. So there was a Yiddish word. I never knew the word before. It's called faribel. Faribel means to hold on to a grudge. Some of these faribels, they were intergenerational. It wasn't only that was like your grandfather insulted my grandfather. Now, I have to be honest, even though that sounds crazy, when we become super sensitive, it's very normal because we're so defensive. We're so worried that somebody may hurt me. So I want to make a very important distinction. There's a difference between how you treat someone else, which must be very sensitively, particularly women and children. It speaks about in Jewish law, even the widow of a king. She might have a beautiful palace and 1,000 servants, but she feels anxiety. She feels like she's missing her protector. Many people today, they come from divorced homes. Studies show it creates more anxiety. Based on the levels of anxiety as we have as a child, we carry that into adulthood. A lot of us are not feeling safe, especially with COVID and chaos. So the bottom line is we have to be super sensitive today because a lot of people, when a person's stressed, it's like a guy that's going out to war. So what is he going to see everywhere? He's going to see an enemy because he's worried about it. So you have to be so happy, so nice, so kind. But the flip side is you also have to know how to get over. We're not talking about fear. We've done some shows about that. We're talking about how to get over anger. So I want to ask you a question, Steve. Do you feel, because you've told me that, when you're dealing with all these celebrities, the first thing you do is you kind of psychologically analyze them and you become their friend. And many of them turn to you for psychological and spiritual advice. So the question is, do you feel anger is a problem? Let's say somebody insulted me in the past. Am I angry because of what he did? Or am I actually angry in the present because I want to take vengeance and I haven't taken vengeance? Which one is it?
I'm angry because I got hurt. It's a personal feeling. It's not that I want to be vindictive and get back to him. It's that he hurt me. Yeah. And I internalize that hurt. Right. We always have a choice of remembering it and dwelling upon it. And if you dwell upon it, it conquers you. It becomes dominant in your relationship. It raises your heartbeat. It gets you to perspire. Your whole day could be great. And then you think about what someone has done to you. And then it changes your whole attitude. It actually owns you. And if you let that happen, then that's terrible because that could have happened years ago, months ago, and you still dwell upon that negative feeling. The only way to let go of that is you have two choices. You could hold on to it for the rest of your life, and it could drive you nuts, and it could, who knows what it could be, but it could be negative. Or you could just learn to forgive. And you say, hey, that happened in the past. I'm going to stop thinking about it, and and let it go. It's not easy to do. It's probably the hardest thing to do is when someone hurts you is to let go of it. And you have two choices. You could think about the good parts of the relationship or the bad parts. And I dwell only on the good part, and I overcome myself, and I don't remember the bad parts because I don't want to. It's just like your body. Your body says, hey, I want to remember the negative, the negative, the negative. And it becomes like a cancer inside you, and it overcomes you. Or you could just let it go and move on. A lot of times my friend says, are you still talking to them after all they did to you? And I go, what did they do to me? Because I don't remember. I moved on. I only remember the good parts. And then when I do talk to them, I forgot about all the negative stuff. Or I choose not to talk to them at all. But I don't hold it against them. I still remember the good parts.
So that's really a good suggestion, remembering the good instead of the bad, forgiving. But I got to tell you how I feel about it. I feel that what happens, think about this. Let's say, this hits me, as a child, the child like bumps their head. Sometimes you like smack the floor, naughty floor, naughty floor. So what actually psychologically occurs when, let's say, a person, God forbid, hits me? So let's say that person, I turn around and it turns out it's my buddy. I haven't seen him for 5 years. I'm like, why? Yeah. But let's say it's somebody else and he's snickering. I'm like, whoa. So in other words, it's not the action. It's the perception of offense. That's what's happening. Your ego, basically, your pride has become offended, has been shamed, has been lowered. And I write about this in my book, Kabbalah Love. And I say that relationships have a seesaw effect. Here's a nice little seesaw. Free advertisement, pomegranate juice, very healthy. So it has a seesaw effect. If somebody puts you down, you have a need to put them down. Why? Because we don't mind being friends with people. We'll be equal to them. We don't even mind being the top dog, but we always mind being below someone that we think we should be equal to. What does that mean? For example, I don't mind that someone else is the president of the United States. I'm not the president. In fact, it says that in Jewish law, you're not allowed to be jealous. How can you say don't be jealous? I'm jealous. The answer is that, are you jealous, let's say, a prince, it's hard these days to imagine, or a movie star married another movie star, gorgeous starlet. Are you jealous? No, because I'm not a movie star. I'm not in the league. So in other words, let's say it was somebody, your classmate. You feel like, hey, I could have had that. So jealousy is when you feel lower when it shouldn't be. I'll give you another example. Let's say you go into the bank and they give a person $1 million. Are you jealous? No, it's his $1 million. Let's say they're giving everybody $1 million. It's Happy Bank Day. You know that this happens in Overland Park. Happy Bank Day, $1 million for all our clients. So what's going to happen now? You're going to say, hey, why didn't you give me $1 million? They say, well, we don't like you. You're like, what do you mean? In other words, I'm a customer just like he's a customer. Now, let's say they're going to say we're giving out $1 million to our, I don't know, high net individuals. So I know I'm not a high net individual. I go sit and coach class on the plane. I'm not jealous of the people in first class because I'm not paying that money. It doesn't bother me. So the point is that anger is when you have an expectation and it's been lowered. And now what happens is your ego says, this is not good. This was not fair. I'm not allowed to be here and he's allowed to be there. That's not going to happen. And so now you've got this need to either equal it or be higher. Now, that's why my point or my belief is that anger is not really about what the person did to you. Anger is about what you want to do to the person. And that's why Vengeance, they call it sweet. Not that I'm advocating vengeance. We're not allowed to take vengeance. But why do people get a little high from it? Because they feel, I put him down now. Or something that's very obvious to a lot of people. If somebody says something rude to me, so what's the instinct? I say something rude back. And then I'm like, I got him. So according to Judaism, you're not allowed to do that. If somebody else is a jerk, that's their problem. You have to be a holy person. You have to be a good person. But the question is this, and this is something you said, and science tells us this: anger is literally poison. It will create hypertension, more heart attacks. It will destroy a person. But a lot of people are angry, and usually with good reason. Somebody was malicious to them, somebody they expected better, somebody they thought there was a friend, and it put them down. And the answer is as follows. Now, if you can forgive them, fine, you don't have any issue. But I believe if you just recognize what anger really is, it's not really about the injustice that occurred to you. We think it's about injustice, but there's injustice in Africa. Am I angry about that injustice? I'm not angry. I'd like to help them, but I'm not angry. Anger is always my ego saying, I got to get that person. And it's actually upset. For example, imagine I'm in a boxing ring. It's like the adrenaline comes up. It's like I got to win. And so it's that notion of the fight. And in fact, this is a good example because we all have this spirit of a fight in us. And if somebody's beat me, I got this need to beat them back, even in a friendly way. I want to beat them back. So once you understand that all the people you're angry with, think about this for a second. Dear listener, if you got here, everybody you're angry with, the only reason you're angry with them is because your ego wants to be evil. It wants to push them down like you were pushed down. So now you can release that desire because it's a desire, it's a subconscious desire, which hides itself as justice. It was unjust. It's not justice you're seeking. You're not trying to help anyone. You're just trying to put the other person down because they put you down. And once you understand that, you can really overcome it. And I want to conclude, and then I want to hear from you, something extraordinary that the Baal Shem Tov teaches about overcoming anger. He says like this: the way to overcome anger is through two things. It's through joy and it's through love. You see, imagine I make these concoctions and I put in lots of healthy things. Now, each thing adds a flavor. So let's say I put in, garlic in here. How do I overcome the flavor of garlic? The garlic is here. It ain't going out. I could put in honey. Put in enough honey, I won't taste the garlic. So the same thing is when you have joy and you have love in your heart, you'll forget about the anger because it's not like the anger is real. The anger is a desire to get vengeance. So therefore, if you get rid of that by having a different desire, a new desire, and that's why I'll give a simple example. If you told me right now, let's say I carry some anger about somebody that hurt me, and I say, by the way, Zevi, right now we're gonna make you into, the chief rabbi of United States. I was like, oh, great position. I'm going to be so busy thinking about that. I don't have any time to think about this. So the point is that if you fill yourself with love and you fill yourself with joy, get yourself involved in good things. Think about, even make money, help people, do good. I know you just made a beautiful donation to Kol Chabad. Everybody needs to donate to help the poor Jews in Israel, the people that are starving. So the point is, if you're involved in good, you don't have time for all this garbage. So that's my solution. We've discussed 5 solutions. You had mentioned forgiveness, as well as thinking about the good of the relationship and not the bad. Then I mentioned from the Baal Shem Tov 2 things: joy. And I mentioned also from myself the idea, knowing what anger really is. It's really vengeance. So I don't want to be a bad person. So therefore I can get rid of that desire. And finally, just love people. You see, this is what really happens. It's very fascinating. The reason people sometimes are malicious, and everybody's been bullied. You know, you think about it psychologically. I spoke to a really big psychologist, and he had no understanding of bullying. Like, why is there bullying? Even anti-Semitism. We're Jews. You know, people have been targeting us for thousands of years. My mother had 3 of her grandparents were murdered for being Jews in Russia. My father, you know, his whole family from the freaking Nazis. And this has been happening right now. The stupid Arabs want to do the same thing. So what's going on? Well, what's wrong with these people? The answer is it's all jealousy. And they are suffering from an anger because they have low self-esteem. The Arabs are a really good example of this. They have low self-esteem. They carry shame. And I have a friend, he was a former terrorist. Thank God he found Christianity and became a lover of the Jewish people. He wrote a thesis on this, and he wrote a book called The Mind of Terror. And basically, when Ishmael got kicked out of the house, what happened was he basically felt shame. The Arabs have a lot of inner shame. Like Lawrence of Arabia said, there's, what's the word? Exnophobic. And so people that have shame, they're jealous of the person that doesn't have shame. So they have this need to shame them. So people have been bullied. So what is the bully really looking for? He looks like he's a tough guy. He looks like he's in control. He's not in control. I say that if a person's walking around like a knight in shining armor, you know what that means? He's afraid. Because if he didn't have fear, he wouldn't have armor. So the tougher we are, the more we're afraid of getting hurt. And so we have to understand a lot of people, they've got this fear of getting hurt because they've been hurt. And once you understand that, you can just relax a lot. A lot of people, they just have this fear in them. And all the people that are bullies, the only reason they're doing it is they're jealous that you're not feeling that pain that they're feeling. It's coming from pain. And this is something else that the Alter Rebbe says actually in the chapter Lev, chapter Heart of Tanya. It says, if you can feel compassion on somebody that is evil, it will take away your anger. So if you imagine all the people that hurt you and now feel bad for them, see every reason in the book to feel bad for them. So it will take away your anger. So in conclusion, sorry, I spoke a lot. So now we have 6 tips. 6 tips on getting rid of anger. But people, it's like a prescription. It only works if you do it. Steve, give us your 10 cents.
Imagine my family selling me into slavery. And then through slavery, I end up in prison. And then I end up meeting my family again. And my family is petrified after what they did to me. And I turn to them when I see them and I go, God has done this. It's not you. That's what happened to Joseph. And we should always remember Joseph's feeling. He didn't personalize on his brothers. And that's what happens every time we're tested. It's not that person. That person just happened to be the person that delivered it. Just move on.
Right. That's a 7th mechanism. If we have real faith in God, that this was from God. In fact, Alter Rebbe speaks about this. Sometimes, even in a past lifetime, we might have hurt that person. So it's a payback. And what you're mentioning is maybe it's to change our circumstance in order for us to become the prime minister. Because sometimes, most of the time, we're not going to change on our own. Everything's going good. We're not going to change. So something's got to happen and we wake up. It changes. And so if we really have true faith in God, and I think, you know what, you know who I think? You mentioned Joseph, and he is the example in the Bible of how not to get angry. But I actually think that the best example of not getting angry are the Jewish people. You know, if you think about it, the Nazis, what they did to us was so sick. And yet, I'm not trying to, you know, other groups had sufferings and Holocaust, but many of them, because they're angry, they're stuck in the past. But what did we do 4 years after a third of our people were murdered? We started a new country. Everywhere we went, your family, you told me, I think we're from Hungary.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure most of them were butchered. Everywhere they went, my grandfather, my grandfather's whole family. And yet, I'm not saying money is like everything. It's not, obviously not, but just because a lot of people recognize it. He died a multimillionaire. More importantly, he set up a family. He helped set up institutions. He wrote a very famous book. He had a radio show that taught Tanya. He helped thousands of people. So in other words, we know one thing. It's a simple thing. If somebody hurts you, it's because they are basically hurt people. So they have a problem, not you. I was saying this to someone earlier, that this lady, very, very, very special lady, she's actually a convert. And her husband, unfortunately, passed away, but he looks Jewish. He's got the yarmulke and the beard and everything. And she was in Denver in an elevator, and some guy made an anti-Semitic remark to her husband. So I said to her, so how did it make you feel? So she says, I felt really sorry for him. I could see he has problems. And I gotta tell you, with me, I always do this. If an anti-Semite makes a remark, remember I was at a gas station here, I smiled at them. You know why? Because subconsciously, what does he want? He's a bully. He wants me to be as miserable as him. And it just threw them off. I heard the one guy say to the other guy, he's smiling. It's like, what do we do now? I'll tell you 2 other stories. There was once this protest against Israeli products by, again, miserable Arabs. And so we had a couple of Chassidim in New York. And, it starts to be like this altercation. Like people are, I said, guys, let's dance. I tell you, Steve, if I had dropped a nuclear bomb, those guys would have not been like more shocked. Because when we were dancing, we were saying to them, we're not fighting. We're not evil. We don't hate you. I even saw this thing that this kind of a reporter, Israeli reporter, went to a Hamas rally. They're all dressed in the green, kill Israel, blah, blah, blah. They put their little kids in these suicide suits. And he goes to this guy there holding his daughter. And he says to him, you want your daughter to kill herself? And he's like, yes. And he's like, don't you love your daughter? Why would you want her to kill her? Why would you want to kill her? So he says, well, wouldn't you want your kid to kill me? And he's like, no. He's like, what do you mean no? He literally said this. It's like priceless. What do you mean no? In other words, in his head, there's a war, but it's only on his side. We don't hate you, So what do they say? Holding a grudge is like taking poison and waiting for your enemy to die. And finally, there's one other story. I think it's a great story if I can just make stories of myself. But it's like, it really brings out the point. I was in South Africa, and we were in this, Chabad. We put on film with people and stuff like that. In this marketplace. So it's an open place, a great place to be. And we had a couple of Muslims come by. Some of them, they were nice and were schmoozing. They went to the synagogue, no problem. And one guy, I could tell after like 20, 30 seconds, the guy was like antagonistic. There's no point in arguing with someone antagonistic. So I said to him as follows. I said, tell me, do you love me or do you hate me? So he goes, well, the Palestinians. I said, I just want you to know that I love you. And he put his head down and he walked away. Because psychologically, behind the whole hate is jealousy of being loved. They feel, somebody made them feel unlovable. And so what we need to do in life is realize a lot of people have been made to feel that they're unlovable. And we all need love. Psychologists say we need love more than we need food. We need to feel that we're loved, we're precious. So the Rebbe would always say you have to end off with a positive action step. So Steve, can you give, you're a personal trainer, and I'm sure that's one of the things you do is you give people action steps. Is that correct?
Yes.
So from everything we said, can you give people action steps that they can implement in their life that will overcome anger?
It's really, really hard. And you have to try a lot. And you have to work on it. And it has to really come from your heart. And you really have to forgive. And if you really, really forgive, it's not easy, then you're free. And once you're free, then they can never, ever bother you again because you stop caring. You actually just stop caring. And that's the most important thing.
Steve, God bless you. That's a beautiful thing that you're saying. And let's bless the whole world. You know, a lot of people don't realize that behind the negative rhetoric of a former president, behind this anti-white and anti-Semitism and all the shaming is one thing. It's jealousy of love. You know, he wrote a book, Dreams of My Father. He felt abandoned. And when we get jealous, like I was saying before, there's a need to make other people lower. And that actually goes on in the mind. I felt it myself. I remember I was in a very negative state, very difficult state of my life. And like people that now I love and before I love, I began to see their negative. You know, it says in Hasidus, Jewish mysticism, we all have positive and negative. Everyone. But if I'm seeing the positive in you, do you know why I'm seeing it? Because I am in a positive state. We actually see ourselves. And if I am seeing the negative in you, it's because I'm in a negative state. And so we have to appreciate that when we're seeing negative in each other, it's not the other person. It is you and the glasses that you are wearing. Because if, like Steve has done, forgiven people that hurt him badly, but he doesn't think about it. If you can do that, and the sign that you've done it is you just don't care. That's really the sign that you don't care. And so it doesn't mean you're naive. You're not naive anymore. You're not going to get abused again. Sometimes we're afraid we're going to get hurt again. You're not going to get hurt again because you know, and instinctively or reflectively, you're not going to do that. But maybe that's part of it. People are afraid and therefore they're holding on as a protective mechanism. The bottom line is, I really encourage each and every one of us to, and may God help us. And we have to understand this is so critical. You know, Steve, I know you do this and I do this. Is 2 weeks after I stopped looking at the media, I became happy. You cannot you cannot look. The media is so negative. I have to say, I don't even go to Jewish religious media outlets. Why? Because the media has taken on negativity. We have to be positive. Only positive. Your only question in life has to be, what is the reason God made me alive today? You know, this very day I heard of 2 people who passed. I'm alive, you're alive, there's a reason. We're here because God wants us to be here. And the reason always has to do with goodness and kindness and never has to do with vengeance and cruelty. That's for sure. And the one way you can tell if a leader, no matter what they say, think about all those Germans. In a way, I don't really feel bad for the Germans, but in a way, I feel sorry for them. They were brainwashed to become murderers. They weren't murderers. That wasn't their nature. They were brainwashed. And there are millions of people that are being brainwashed, whether it's Russia that's telling people to hate America, whether it's in the West telling people to hate this group, hate that group. All of that, you can always tell if somebody, a leader or any outlet is good or evil by one thing. Is it creating unity or division? That's your question. This is going to lead to greater unity or greater division. That's black and white. It's an outcome. Everybody in the world from Genghis Khan to Hitler thought that they were righteous. You never know what someone says if it's righteous or not. What you do know is the outcome. Is it leading to unity? You know, if I was, God forbid, a German and I was listening to Hitler, all I had to ask myself was one question: is this going to lead us to unity? I don't think so. So no matter what he says, he's wrong. Is it going to lead us to unity? So you take a leader like Netanyahu, it's always about unity. Obviously, a great leader like the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And even in the secular world, you have people like Mother Teresa. You have many people that are trying to create unity. And so therefore, I charge each and every one of you, you have to get over anger. Anger is the greatest trap that you can be in. I'll say a nice story. Nobody knows the story because it happened to my cousin. My cousin, Nissen Goldman, he's a very sweet young rabbi now, but his father was holding him. And this is literally the day Nelson Mandela was released from prison, 27 years in prison. So he's taking a walk, and he lived in the area where my cousin lives. And my uncle, he's so happy. He meets Nelson Mandela, you know, he's a celebrity and everything. And Nissen Goldman, he looks away from him. So he says, oh, he's fighting old battles. So in other words, Nelson Mandela is a good role model. When he left prison, he says, I knew I had to leave all the anger, all the resentment behind me, because if I didn't, I would remain in prison. I'd be taking the prison with me. And that's what you said before. And sometimes we need a motive. And I'll say to you, do you want to remain forever? Because until you change, it won't change. You want to remain forever in the prison that somebody that was miserable wanted to put you in? Is that what you want? Would you want to be free like a bird to love? That's the option.